So welcome to Northern Powerhouses, our business success stories series of interviews, where we discuss with local business leaders their backgrounds, their successes and challenges, and what's really driving them forwards. And this morning, I'm delighted to have with us Len Campey, who's director at BuBul. So Len, firstly, thanks for spending a bit of time with us this morning. If you'd like to introduce yourself and BuBul, what you do and how you help people, that would be wonderful.
Thank you very much indeed, Chris. And again, thank you for the invitation to join you this morning. I really appreciate it. Before I speak about BuBul, if you don't mind, I'd like to just give a little bit of a potted history to my career and what got me to the present point, because sure. I think that's quite important. I guess I'm Irish, you might tell from my accent. We came to England back in the 70s when all the troubles were on, etc.
Yep.
And my first role at that time was as an internal salesperson in a local company back in Keighley. And that was my first exposure to sales, but it whetted my appetite to the point whereby in those days, I saw an advert in the Daily Mirror, of all places, for the National School of Salesmanship. And it was to teach through a correspondence course over 2 years, the principles of basic selling. And that just, it struck me as something that I wanted to do. Really? So I paid my money, which was a lot of money in those days compared to what I was earning. And I did the enrollment and I took part in the 2-year correspondence course. One of the conditions was that they would actually provide interviews at the end of the period and hopefully seek employment for yourself in the role that you were looking to achieve. So I did all of that. And that was my first exposure to external selling. Selling, I've been involved with as a salesperson and a senior manager for the best part of 40 years. Absolutely loved it. I've done all that kind of traditional door knocking, literally walking the streets of Leeds, which is my territory, in all sorts of weather. And it gave me an understanding of a lot of basics of selling. So fast forward to where I am today, my corporate career was fantastic. I have a lot of success in that, made lots of very good contacts. But the reason that I joined BuBul when we launched a couple of years ago was that due to COVID, my actual head of sales role with the company I was employed with at the time was made redundant. They wanted to seek some external investment, which they did very successfully. A wonderful company, but as investors do, they did an analysis and a due diligence exercise, and they felt that my role overlapped with some of the other roles, and therefore it was made redundant, which is perfectly understandable.
Yep.
At that time, the founder of BuBul and the MD is a gentleman called Nigel Greenwood. And I'd known Nigel for a few years previous. We used to meet up on a regular basis for a coffee. So we met up again during COVID when we're permitted to do so. We had a coffee and he was asking me about what I wanted to do, where I was up to sort of in life and in work. And I said to him, I wasn't sure entirely what I wanted to do, but I was sure what I didn't want to do. And to be frank, Chris, I didn't want to go back into the corporate world. Again, I'd done it for the best part of 40 years. And I was at a stage in my life where I could afford to make slightly different decisions. So my answer to him was, Nigel, I just really like to work with a small company where I can have hands-on input, I can make a difference, I can use some of my knowledge and experience to help that business grow and hopefully be successful and enjoy myself. And there we go. So Nigel said, why don't you come and join BuBul? And if you fancy it, why don't you put a little bit of money in as an investor too? So that's what I did, Chris. So that's why I'm here today. Yeah.
Wonderful. What a great history, what a great background. So tell us a little bit more about BuBul and what you do and how you help people.
Yeah, sure. So BuBul is a software platform. What it does, it makes practical, tailored and affordable business advice available to predominantly early stage startups, pre-startups, or indeed micro SMEs. Now, as you will well know, based on what you do, there are some fantastic organizations out there from a perspective of business coaching and business advisory services, but not all micro businesses can take advantage.
Yes.
So we introduced BuBul to work with those early stage businesses so that we can, quite frankly, initially help them survive and then help them thrive by giving them access to the platform. BuBul is a SaaS solution which enables them to access advice from over 75 carefully selected, trusted local business experts who will be available to them to guide them and instruct them how to be a better business and a more successful business. Yeah.
Wonderful. Sounds great. It's really interesting the way because I would agree Absolutely. We work. I have worked occasionally with startups or very small businesses, but the sort of the feed levels do make it difficult to work on a one-to-one basis. We do some group work, which again is a level, but there still is that point where people want to start. They don't have a lot of, we were talking before we started a little bit about every penny every penny needs to go in the right place, and sometimes advice doesn't come top. So having ability to access all those people is really wonderful. And funnily enough, one of the reasons I joined Action Coach to work with SME businesses, typically sort of 5 to 50 people. We work with larger too, but those that was in my business. I joined a business as joint third employee in Harrogate. We grew that to 100 people and 12 million turnover. So we were perhaps the top end of SME-ship, if you like. But we only, when we got past 10 million turnover, were the larger management consultancies started to have some interest, very little interest. And I remember thinking, okay, yeah, great when we get to 10 or 20 million, but you don't get there until you get to your first million, and you don't get your first million until you get your first 100,000. And that there wasn't any support. And that was where I was really keen to fill the space that we fill. So it really is fascinating what you're doing. And yeah, brilliant.
Thank you.
So Len, tell us a little bit. Obviously, you said you founded in 2021. What are some of the biggest challenges and issues you've had to overcome so far?
One of the biggest challenges for us that BuBul truly is a unique service, so we don't compare directly with anything else. Now that's good from having an opportunity to promote ourselves within the market, but it's more difficult because it's new, it's not very well known. As you touched on, every penny in a small business, and we are a small business ourselves, every penny needs to be spoken for. So when we come to improving awareness and increasing knowledge about what we do through marketing, we have limited funds in order to do that. So our biggest challenge right now, Chris, is to educate the market as to what we do, how to differentiate ourselves from some of the other fantastic business advisory services. Because as mentioned earlier, we're not standing on anybody's toes. We're not competing directly with anybody. And so much that to go so far as to say that if any of our prospects could actually work and afford to do so with professional business coaches and advisors, we would recommend that they do so. We would signpost them in that direction. So we're not unaware that there are alternatives out there, but for us, it's very much about understanding our niche, how to approach it, and to make ourselves successful by indicating the differentiation between BuBul and some of the other services. Yeah.
Brilliant. No, I really can see how these things fit. And similarly, when we find it difficult, I really always want to help people. So sometimes, I do a bit of pro bono work with people because I really want to help. But having, options for people to access this is absolutely, because there are different levels, and obviously a one-to-one type arrangement typically accelerates things.
Yes.
Not always, but typically. And so when people start to get that curve, it makes sense. But we don't, as we said, we don't get to 10 million till we got to 1 million. We don't get to 1 million till we get to 100,000. So that's absolutely brilliant. So not just with BuBul, but obviously you've had quite a significant career. What are some of the biggest learnings you've had about business and growing businesses in general, then?
I think for me, one of the key things is to identify and surround yourself with a trusted circle of people who will give you honest, constructive and frank advice. So, typically that might include family, it might not. But as we know, family either tend to err on one side of caution or actually to be too optimistic. So they don't necessarily always tell you what you need to hear.
Yep.
So I found many years ago a few people that I trust implicitly, who I can go have conversations with. I can describe the challenges, I can describe my fears, I can describe my thought process, etc. And then very lovingly, they'll pull it to bits and they'll challenge me, Chris, to make sure that I'm confident and aware about and passionate about, committed to results or to the solutions that I'm proposing. Or conversely, they might open my eyes a little bit and make me think and realize that it wasn't such a good idea in the first place. So for me, it's about the people. It's about having those people of trust that you can go to in good times and bad times as well. And I think one of the other things is that lots of people deliberate. They take a lot of time to overthink their options.
Yep.
And sometimes you just got to push the button and get on with it. And I'm a great believer in that, you got to go from where you are In other words, if you've made a decision and it hasn't quite materialized in the way that you'd hoped, that's okay. Take the next step and go in a different direction if it's necessary, but keep going, just keep pushing on. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm nodding because I totally agree both with what I do, but also, my experiences. I was talking to somebody earlier, and we were going so fast. We were growing at 30 to 40%, and then the division I had was going at 400%. And I had to get to a position where indecision just wasn't an option. I had to make a decision, but I only drew comfort in the idea that I'll make a decision, not knowing if it was the right one, but by my actions, do my best to make it the best one, if that makes sense.
Exactly that. And I think more so these days where you've got technology moving at such a pace, it's
Yes.
very hard to keep abreast with it. And therefore, hesitancy usually means that there's another version of something or another option on the market. You standing still is no good. Standing still is going backwards, Chris, isn't it?
Absolutely. No, and I'll take your first point. Actually, man, but I was going to ask you and please feel free to name anybody, but who the best coaches you've worked with. Obviously, we're a coaching organisation, whether that's business, sport, or life in general. So it can be for many things. Interesting enough, before I'll give you a chance to think about those, but a couple of definitions of coaching that I really like that were totally relevant to what you said was I often describe myself as an unreasonable friend in business. Because I care, but I care enough to challenge and to ask those questions and not give opinions. But and the other one, which came from the great Robbie Williams, was I think he said a true friend is someone that listens to bullshit, tells you that it's bullshit, and then listens to some more bullshit, which I just saw is exactly what we need in business and life, I think, in general. So yeah, if you talk a little bit more about some of the people that had the biggest impact on your
there's a couple of people in particular who made big impacts on me. Not necessarily to name them, but what made a difference was that they showed a genuine interest in what I had to say. They listened.
Great.
Again, they challenged what I had to say, but I always got the feeling that they had my best interests at heart. They weren't just trying to use their position of authority to dictate what I actually did or what I thought. And I guess that's kind of what I've tried to encourage in my management style as well. I tried to be really open to encourage people to voice an opinion, to have a view, to contribute to a decision, to contribute to part of the strategy that we're trying to implement. Right. And I've always taken the viewpoint whereby it doesn't matter who comes up with a solution, as long as the solution is the right one that we can actually implement. But in terms of kind of coaching, it's related to this, but I once read a book called Taming Tigers. I don't know whether you know it, by a chap called Jim Lawless. One of the things it talks about, or the whole ethos of the book, is that people really can learn to achieve things that they first thought impossible, who might have thought that what they wanted to achieve was outside their realm. And one of the key points for me was that Jim spoke about was, imagine you're an older person. You're in a retirement home. You're in this beautiful retirement home. You're overlooking the sea from this panoramic view through these wonderful windows, etc. Ask yourself a key question. Would you rather regret the things you did or regret the things you didn't do? And that stayed with me for years and years and years. And in this kind of similar theme, it talks about in life, both business, and personal life. Do you want to be seen as an architect of your life or a victim of your life? And that's pretty profound. And that makes me think about things that I do, taking responsibility for my actions, taking responsibility for my ideas, being accountable, etc. Because, we only pass this way once. So you've got to get on with it and get on and do it. But coming back to the coaching thing, I just believe that people who care about people, not just the process, is important to me. And that empathy and that trust and that relationship of openness is crucial to any form of coaching. And I've been fortunate to enjoy that with a few people. Yeah.
Wonderful. Great. No, I completely agree. And that, yes, I am familiar with the book, but not for a very long time. But yeah, and I think the other one that I always find really interesting is when we're looking at things that we perceive to be impossible, it's if somebody else has done it, then so can I. There's the great story of when Sir Roger Bannister broke the 4-minute mile, which was considered to be an impossible feat at the time, that within a year, I think it was 39 other people did the same. Get from 0 to 1, and then all of a sudden, because it can be done. And I think I think there's always, if we can look at and have any form of role model, we don't always get that opportunity, but say, well, if they've done it, maybe I can too. So
I'm very much the same. Sorry, I beg your pardon for cutting across.
Please go on.
I think I'm very much in the same mindset, whereby I look at exactly that point and sort of think, if it's achieved by, or been achieved, or is achievable by someone else, then they can do it. I can do it. Why not?
Absolutely. And the other one of my favourite sayings, I'm going to come to this in a second, is Henry Ford's, whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right. And even if somebody hasn't done it, if I believe I can, I start to ask the question, how can I, rather than can I? And that totally transforms that question. So Len, I love to pick up quotes and sayings that people use. Is there any useful quotes or sayings that you use on a regular basis, or that have inspired you historically?
Yeah, I guess I'm thinking of one person in particular. If he heard this particular interview, he would chuckle, because my kind of catchphrase throughout my career is attention to detail.
Great.
So it's a little bit like, if you look after the pennies, the pounds will look after themselves. My mindset has always been, if you pay care and attention to the detail, you won't get too much wrong. The rest of it will take kind of care of itself. And this particular chap, I know if he heard this, he'd be chuckling it away too. Yeah, that's absolutely one of my favorites. But I think it's the other side of it is, do what you think, do what you believe in. Don't be persuaded to change your viewpoint just because someone else doesn't necessarily agree. So that's not so much a saying, that's more of a mindset again. Yes. And I'm a strong believer in that. Having the willpower, having the confidence, having the drive, having the motivation to achieve something are crucial to getting there and achieving what you want to do.
Yeah, 100, totally agree. And it is fascinating, isn't it? That but it's interesting. It's attention to detail, because most people obviously have had a very successful career in sales, and the behavioural profile of most salespeople is one of a lack of detail, I would suggest. And so having that in your armoury would have, I'm sure, been a major part of your success.
To be fair, Chris, I was probably told early on that I made a better manager than I did salesperson. So perhaps that's why. Well, I am quite meticulous and organised and thought process driven, etc. So yeah, I very much enjoyed sales manager, although I had a great career in sales as well.
I think it's really interesting. I mean, I do a lot of work in behavioural profiling, and in what and it is, the reality, the sort of typical situation is salespeople get sales jobs because they're just good with people, not necessarily good at running a process of selling, therefore they absolutely need a good manager behind them, because the desire of a salesperson to do zero paperwork, zero reporting, zero anything.
Yeah, we've all been there. I've certainly seen that. Absolutely. Yeah.
So, I'm fascinated with this, but what would you say you've learned about yourself throughout your career, Len?
I think one of the most important that my own worst critic was myself. If I didn't do everything correctly first time and accurately first time. And I think that held me back a little bit, because I might deliberate. Going back to the earlier conversation, I might deliberate about something rather than just get on and do it.
Yes.
And the older I've gotten, the more confident I've got, is I'm just, everybody makes mistakes. It's how you deal with those, how you rectify it. And I've changed my mindset very much. And I think that in trying to understand people's motivations a little bit better, it's not always personal. You know what I mean? Business is business. And sometimes we just got to cut through it and get things done, for the right reasons and to achieve the right result. Yeah.
Brilliant. No, makes absolute sense. And so, looking at BuBul and where you are and where you're going, what does the future look like for you guys? And what challenges do you face, if any, do you think?
The future looks good. The major challenge for us is going back to that awareness thing again. We need to make sure that we are communicating what BuBul's all about in the right circles for the right reasons, to position ourselves alongside and collaborate with other business advisory type services to persuade them that we're not in competition.
Yep.
The end goal really is we'd love to see BuBul as an organization in the next couple of years Well, we've got potentially about 20 people in the business. One of our goals is to employ people who are just disabled or invalids in some way that we can perhaps use on a customer service line or a sales support line or something like that.
Brilliant.
So it actually gives them something back to the community and creating opportunity for people as well. Yeah.
Brilliant. Oh, well, that's great. That's great. And it'd be very much great to swing by in another 6-12 months and just see how we are.
We look forward to that. We look forward to that.
Me too. Me too. And I'm keen to know what you would say to anyone that was thinking of going into a business right now. And obviously there'll be people that would be some of your clients, hopefully. But what would be your key advice?
My key advice would be to take advantage of all of that experience and knowledge that surrounds you, either through people, through processes, through schemes, educate yourself as to what the challenges are, be clear as to what's required to actually run a business. But if you are passionate about it and you're driven by it, do it. Absolutely do it. Yeah, absolutely.
Brilliant. I completely concur. And if you started again, I know it's the fairly early days, but if you started again, is there anything significant that you do differently, do you think?
I don't think there's anything significant. We've clearly made one or two mistakes along the way. We certainly learned from them. I don't think there is, Chris. I don't think there's anything extreme other than, if we could raise more money for marketing specifically. I think that's a little bit of a weak area for us. But, again, I go back to the fact that we're only 2.5 years old as well. So we're still on that early stage journey as well. And we'll certainly get where we need to be. Yeah,
brilliant. Well, obviously, wish you all the best luck in doing so. And finally, what would be the best advice you could give an 18-year-old you if you could go back in time and do so? Sorry, I think we froze for a sec. What would be the best advice you could give an 18-year-old you if you could go back in time and do so, Len?
Oh, an 18-year-old me. An 18-year-old me. My best advice would be to believe more, action quicker, be less hard on myself, and enjoy the journey.
Brilliant.
Enjoy the journey better. Yeah.
Fabulous. It's really interesting. I mean, I coach people specifically. The two things were that idea, that gap in the market, but primarily was my first business, the growth in it, and not really knowing how to grow businesses at that point, because we really weren't taught that. Which pretty much broke me because it just grew. We grew it too fast, for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I do this because I want people to enjoy the journey, not just the outcome. And I think too many people put their life on hold for 10 years and hope the money will turn up at the end, and in the meantime expect to have a tough life. And that doesn't mean we shouldn't work hard, and we don't have to work hard at times, but heck, 10 years or whatever it would be is a long time not to enjoy it. It's
all about balance, isn't it? And of course,
absolutely.
As younger people, we don't necessarily see that, but again, I agree.
Yeah, it's the naivety of youth, which is great.
Indeed.
But it's a pity we can't live our lives backwards. Actually, I think that would help. Well, Len, it's been absolutely, really, very interesting and very inspiring to talk to you. Just for anyone that's watching that would like to contact you or BuBul, what would be the best way to do that?
Yeah, you can contact me at len@bubulexpert, all one word.com, and I'd be pleasure to have a conversation with anybody to see if I can help in any way possible.
Brilliant. Well, again, thanks again for your time today. And as I say, let's meet up again in 6-12 months and just get the next stage of the journey.
Great to speak with you, and thank you for the invitation, Chris. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Thanks, Len.